Spring's the perfect time for big family meals with holidays like Easter and Mother's Day. And Jones Dairy Farm is here to make those big events easier for you. From fully cooked meatballs to naturally smoked ham to out-of-this-world bacon, Jones Dairy Farm has been making mealtimes better since 1889. You can find their high-quality and amazing flavors at most grocery stores, including Costco. Check out their product finder on jonesdairyfarm.com to learn where to find Jones near you. It's easy to sit back and look for good things in the world, but what if we could be the good? Goodman Community Center has been a force for good for over 70 years. Now Goodman wants to challenge you to be the good. What can you do to make our community, our country, and our world a better place? Learn more about how you can be a part of what's good at Goodman at goodmancenter.org. Together, we can strengthen lives and secure futures. Today on CityCast Madison. It's National Libraries Week, and at the moment, federal funding for our local libraries is on the line. Last month, President Trump signed an executive order that would gut the agency responsible for issuing federal grants to our public libraries and museums. The latest development, Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul just joined a coalition of states in suing the Trump administration in an attempt to stop these cuts. We sat down with Madison Public Library Director Tana Elias to ask what's at stake should our system lose this funding source. It's Tuesday, April 8th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here is what Madison's talking about. Tana, welcome back to CityCast Madison.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, last time you joined us, we talked about all the amazing things a Madison Library card can offer you, which was so much fun. Today, we're talking about something quite different that, recently on the show, we've been keeping tabs and keeping up on how changes and cuts at the federal level are impacting us here in Wisconsin. And as happy as we are to have you here, it's not under the best of circumstances, unfortunately. Back in March, the library, in collaboration with the Madison Children's Museum, put out a call to action for Madisonians to use their voice in an effort to save critical federal funding that y'all receive from the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services. So, for folks listening, do you have any updates as to where things stand now?
Sure. I can give you a brief overview of what's happened in the last couple weeks. On March 14, President Trump issued his executive order, and that said, and here's a slight quote, "The non-statutory components and functions of the following governmental entities shall be eliminated to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law." So that was 7 different agencies, including the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Then on March 18, Trump fired the acting head of IMLS and replaced her with Keith Sonderling, who was also the Deputy Secretary of Labor, appointed that position just 4 days before. And Sonderling, in a statement at that time, committed to, quote, revitalizing IMLS and restoring its focus on patriotism. Then on March 31st, all 75 staff at the Institute of Museum and Library Services were put on administrative leave for up to 90 days. And since these employees have no access to work-related information or communication methods, we are thinking that's basically a freeze on all federal funding coming from IMLS during that time.
Did you have any sense that IMLS needed revitalization?
No, I think it was a very active and professionally diverse group. It provided a lot of different supports to libraries nationwide, a lot of leadership and professional guidance. And I wouldn't say that it needed revitalization at all.
So what's on the line if IMLS funding gets cut or the agency itself is dismantled?
Yeah, there are kind of a couple of layers of impacts. So at the federal level, the IMLS budget is like 0.0046% of the total federal budget. So it's a very small amount in the federal budget overall, but it's a big amount for libraries. The agency distributed over $200 million annually to libraries, museums, and zoos. So it's not just libraries, it's also museums and zoos and other cultural institutions. And then some money comes then through a grants to the states program to library systems. In Wisconsin, every public library has to be part of a library system. And so we are part of the South Central Library System. And then finally, some of the grant funding from IMLS is competitive and open to public libraries to apply for. So, for example, Madison Public Library has received about 710,000 in the last 12 years alone. And that is just direct funding that we have either applied for and been awarded, or in one case, we received an award for being a national medal winner in 2016.
I remember I was living in D.C. and I saw all the photos of Michelle Obama and you guys receiving an award. It was a really big deal. It's like, oh, I'm so proud. You laid out the layers of impact here. Can you, if you could describe it, like how big of a blow is this for Madison's public library system and other library systems across the state? Should, these plans be carried out to full execution and this, agency being gutted?
Right. There are some direct impacts that we can measure in terms of funding, and those do change from year to year depending on what competitive grants organizations might apply for. But then there are those kind of bigger system-wide and state impacts where we don't have a direct cost, but there are certain things that we would lose. And then taking a step back, our library system, the South Central Library System, receives about 4% of its funding from IMLS. And so that in 24, that comes to about 110,000. And that number varies from system to system. So that's anywhere from 0% in a few library systems in Wisconsin to 9% in some of the northern systems. So those are more rural areas. It's a bigger part of their budget, and they have fewer municipal resources to draw on. So while it's impactful for Madison, it's even more impactful for some of the rural areas of the state. And I think that applies widely to other states as well, although library funding does differ from state to state.
So would it be fair to say that you maybe wouldn't feel here in Madison the direct day-to-day impacts, but there's kind of these larger systemic pieces that, would suddenly not be supported?
Right. I do think that's fair. I also want to highlight, at the South Central level, for example, that 110,000, either we stop doing those services or all the libraries have to pitch in to make up the difference. So for Madison, that's maybe 30 to 40,000 if we want to continue those services. And some of those services were for things like a digitization project. There was 68,000 in professional development. Madison certainly benefits from some of those funds. And so that would be professional development either that our librarians wouldn't get or that we would have to fund through city funding or through foundation funding. And we also, South Central in 2024 received 25,000 to add Amherst, a small library, to our shared ILS, the catalog that runs our book database and our customer database. And Amherst would not have been able to afford that without this additional help from IMLS. So it affects us, and then it also affects the other libraries in our region. And then in terms of the statewide level, that funds a variety of services that we benefit from. The Badger Link resource database, for example, is a statewide database that's run at the DPI level and is available for both schools and public libraries to use. And it gives Madisonians access to hundreds of thousands, probably millions of journal articles and other kinds of research information that that Madison Public Library would have to pay for on its own. And that is population-based and use-based. And, that would be a huge increase to our budget if we had to fund that individually. Likely, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Bringing it back to the grant funding, what library programming has been made possible through IMLS grants?
I think our most popular and well-known program that has been funded through the IMLS grants is the Bubbler. We got a 3-year grant in conjunction with UW-Madison Library School to study arts-based making programs in public libraries. We use the funding to fund both research at the UW level and host a variety of programs at the library level. This was kind of in conjunction with the reopening of the Central Library in downtown Madison. And this was a national model. It's something that has been replicated in libraries across the U.S. since we launched the program. And it really allowed us to help launch dozens of programs across the U.S., to connect with teaching artists, to have kind of new and innovative ways of learning in public libraries, and also adds to the local arts economy. We've seen a lot of growth in the Madison arts economy since we launched the Bubbler.
We love the Bubbler.
We love the Bubbler, too.
We had a conversation earlier this year around an art exhibit that had all kinds of interactive components. The I Am a Man, the rehumanization of Black men. And we know that the Bubbler had a big hand in that. And there was playlists and music you could listen to and all of these interactive things that really bring learning to life in different ways. So yeah, shout out to the Bubbler. And it's not just the library, as you mentioned, that receives IMLS funding. It's also places like the Children's Museum and a few other spots in Madison, right?
Right. So we've been working with Madison Children's Museum because we've partnered on other initiatives in the past. And, you know, for the Madison Children's Museum, they are partway through a grant that's funded by IMLS money for strategic planning. And so far, the grant was for $250,000, and so far they've only received $121,000. So they're right in the middle of a project, and there's no clear guarantee that they will receive the rest of the funding, and there's no clear guidance on how to even apply for the remaining funding. Some of the Madison Children's Museum exhibits that have been funded with IMLS funds are things like the new Nice Age Trail, the Wonderground, and the colorful themed stairwells. I think that's called Stair Trek. So lots of the things that people enjoy in the museum have been funded in part with IMLS funds. And I think it's important to note, too, many other cultural organizations in Madison, in Dane County, and in this region, including Old Brick Botanical Garden, received a $50,000 grant in 2022 to redesign their website. And they applied for, and I think they haven't heard and probably won't hear about a larger $250,000 grant from IMLS. Multiple departments at UW-Madison, Wisconsin Historical Society, Wisconsin Veterans Museum, Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, Arboretum, are just some of the other local organizations that have received funding from IMLS.
All of you guys are the most distinctive organizations in our city, you know? Oh, man, is there anything, there probably is, but it's one of the most upsetting things to have money and have it budgeted and then not be sure that you can use it. Like, it just seems so disruptive.
It's incredibly disruptive. And I think I won't weigh in on government efficiency and so on, but I think it's important, there's a good way to make a reduction and a bad way to make a reduction. And this is the most chaotic way possible to make a reduction. You could have, for example, let the grants continue and then reduce funding in the next cycle, or made a plan, instead of this like immediate response and this like lack of communication around how you can even wrap up a grant, for example. It's just, when you think of wasteful government spending, this feels like wasteful government spending to me.
We're here with Madison Public Library Director Tana Elias, talking about the implications of the Trump administration moving to slash the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the main support for the country's museums and libraries at the federal level, and what that would mean for our library system and more. We're going to dive into the next chapter of this conversation shortly, but first, let's take a quick break.
Springfest at Lowe's means can't miss savings for your home and lawn. Right now, buy 3 bags, get 3 free on Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot all-purpose garden soil. Plus, buy 2, get 1 free on select exterior paint and stain via mail-in rebate. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/16. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii. While supplies last, selection varies by location. See rebate form for complete list of eligible products. Offer excludes clearance and mistints and can't be combined with any other offer, promotion, discount, or coupon.
This episode is brought to you by the Nissan Armada Pro 4X. With a twin-turbo V6 engine ready to propel your adventures, up to 8,500 pounds of towing capacity to haul all your favorite toys and space for 8 passengers. Nissan's most powerful car yet will chew up and spit out anything you throw at it. Learn more about the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada at nissanusa.com. Towing capacity varies by configuration. See Nissan Towing Guide and Owner's Manual for additional information. Always secure cargo.
All right. We're back with Tana Elias, the director of the Madison Public Library, and we're here talking about federal funding cuts. You know, I saw the IMLS grants go far and wide, including 45 minutes away in my hometown, Baraboo, Wisconsin, where funding supports institutions like the Circus World Museum and the International Crane Foundation. Both places I visited so much as a kid and volunteered at and did paintings for, and places Madisonians visit. This money from the IMLS really supports institutions across the state, small town historical societies, community archives, tribal museums, and cultural centers, which, you know, as noted, these are the kinds of places people wrap their local identity around, you know, like Oldberg Gardens, our libraries, institutions of learning where kids and adults can engage in the world in these neat, profound ways. The impact of these kinds of places is tremendous. It's almost beyond words, wouldn't you say?
I would indeed, you know, and I think it's really important to note that not only will libraries be affected through this program, but NEH has been identified, National Endowment for the Humanities has been identified for severe reductions. And then, you know, public libraries are a place where people can come when they don't have access to resources. And so not only are we seeing library resources reduced, but we're seeing resources for homelessness reduced. We're seeing resources for violence prevention and mental health and community connections and, you know, cultural institutions. And many of those people will be coming to libraries to fill the gap. And so I think it's important to know that not only is this funding, you know, are the government cuts directly affecting libraries, but we'll see many, many indirect effects as well. And it's hard to budget for those. Both the direct and the indirect impacts. And it's also hard to plan for those.
With that in mind, there could be, you know, a strain here on local resources for underserved in our communities. And we all just went through this process where the city needed a referendum, needed more money, and libraries were one of the things that were on the line where you guys had to talk about different branches and possibilities for cutting hours and things of that nature.
Right. So because of this IMLS funding, we'll likely see either additional reductions in service, maybe not at the Madison level, but at the state level. So that does affect libraries, what databases and resources we're able to provide, what kinds of professional development we're able to have access to kind of learn about new things in the profession or new resources, or how to provide service in a different way. And I think it's also important to note that, you know, we'll have many impacts that we can't plan for that will be a kind of a cause of this. We're already hearing, for example, that additional service providers in the area that we partner with are seeing fewer either grant funding or seeing fewer resources come their way. And it's going to affect all of us, and it will be harder and harder as the cuts come through.
You know, it's a little bit of a dreary situation that we're talking about. We do not want to see money going away from libraries. If that's a political stance, I'll take it. While people may be feeling helpless in this new world of federal budget slashing, what can people in Madison do to support the library at this time?
I'm so glad you asked. So a couple of things you can do right now. The first thing you can do is contact your U.S. Senator and your congressional representative. We have information on our website at madisonpubliclibrary.org/advocacy. And it's really important for them to hear that you value libraries. And I would say that continuing that message, like reaching out on a regular basis to let them know that libraries are important to you, sharing specific stories with them, rather than like, please, support libraries, but like, I use libraries for this thing in my life, and is what will happen if library support goes away. You can also fill out a postcard for National Library Week. So April 6th through 12th, Madison Public Library is hosting a Share Your Story postcard writing campaign in all 9 of our libraries. And you can stop in anytime to write down what you value about your library. We'll be gathering those up and mailing those to legislators in our area. The Madison Children's Museum is also hosting a postcard writing campaign. I think that is ongoing, and they are doing some of the same work. We use those stories as well to like highlight stories on our social media, or when we go to talk to legislators, to highlight the impacts that libraries have on our local library users. Another thing that you can do is record a short video answering 3 questions for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction to help demonstrate the power of libraries across the state. And that also is on that advocacy page. So those are 3 things you can do now. I think another thing ongoing is educate yourself about issues that matter to you and vote. And then also use your public library, use your local cultural institutions, know all the resources that are available to you, and make sure that you're using them and letting other people know if you're appreciating those resources.
I'm so excited to hear about this postcard campaign because I used to work on Capitol Hill for a second and worked in the federal government, and know and you obviously know, and people listening, that legislators need those stories. They use those stories themselves. If they go up on the floor, if they introduce a bill or they do these things, they talk about Joe who uses this library branch and what happens. Like that is something that is very real, putting a face to the human impact of these cuts.
That's right. Stories are so important. The numbers are impactful, but the stories make it personal and relatable. And as you said, when they're presenting a bill, like it humanizes the impact.
Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
We know that the library is obviously this fantastic place to loan out books, but it also does so much more. Can you give folks a quick refresher on some of the lesser known but still massively helpful resources that the library offers?
How much time do you have? I think one thing that's really important and has really become a key point in public library service in the last 2 decades is computer access. So we have access to computers. We have access to Wi-Fi. For many people, that is the only public internet access they have that is free, that they don't have to pay for, they don't have to buy coffee to use. We know that that's a lifeline for some people. At Madison Public Library, we also connect to a wide variety of other city agencies and nonprofit assistance. So we have anything from learn how to mend your socks and save a few dollars so that you don't have to buy something new, to free tax assistance, to connecting with social service agencies to get housing or shelter or food, and anything in between. We have free audiobooks, we have free ebooks, we have free online magazines, we have
Shout
free
out
access.
to the Libby app.
Woohoo, right? And that's 25% of our circulation now. So 25% of checkouts are people that never come into our library building. And then some of the other lesser known services, I would say, are outer library loan, where we get materials from outside our library system on demand for people. So either hard to find things for genealogy research, for example, or you want to see a yearbook from your high school from 1979.
Oh, wow.
We can get some of those things. You
find your old sweetheart.
Right? Or, again, that genealogy or family history or, just curiosity, or you want to do research on somebody. So lots of things, that's a service that not a lot of people know about or use, but the people who use it, is really impactful for them. That is also funded through IMLS funding in part. And then we have an amazing library system with the South Central Library System. It covers 7 counties and over 60 public libraries. And we have a delivery service that is kind of a model in the nation in terms of you can put something on hold and it doesn't matter where it is. Someone will ship it to you.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a network, and y'all are working it efficiently. So we're proud of you. We thank you for the work that you do. And, in general, I'm glad we got to hear about all of the positive things that your work involves. Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to leave people with to know about this kind of developing situation at the national level?
I think it's just important to follow along with us and with other cultural agencies that you use regularly. Again, we have an advocacy page on our website. I think we'll have it up all year because there's this immediate impact, and then there's what happens to the next funding cycle with IMLS. Is IMLS reauthorized by Congress? So we're going to have new developments on this front and other fronts for other federal funding. We didn't even talk about E-rate, which subsidizes technology for schools and libraries and isn't funded through IMLS, but was part of a recent Supreme Court case. Then we're expecting a ruling on that in July. And so Madison Public Library receives a deep technology discount, and that also might go away. So no shortage of things to stay tuned on. We'll certainly keep people up to date on our advocacy page. But I think it's just important to stay educated, use the resources. And also, I'll be very cautiously optimistic here as a reminder that President Trump went after IMLS and NEH and NEA in his first term. And it was the support of people like our listeners and everyday folks who use libraries who reached out to their legislators, and those legislators fought for additional funding or continued funding for those agencies. And we were successful in the past. And I'm really hoping that everybody speaks out and that we make enough difference that we are able to see some continued funding for libraries and museums going forward.
I love ending on a little hope. And I also want to say happy 150th anniversary to the Madison Public Library. I know that you guys are marking that this year with the theme celebrating the past, inspiring the future. So we're going to have to keep up with you for a number of reasons here and do something to mark that with you as well.
Yeah, the 150th anniversary really is a highlight in all of these difficult times. It's wonderful to think that we've had public libraries. They've been funded for 150 years at the local level. And, we're anticipating that we will continue to have good library service going forward. We know that will grow and change as the city grows and changes. But, the kind of constant innovation and efficiency of resources, I think, is something that we can look forward to as well.
Tana, thank you so much for making the time to join us on CityCast Madison today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Tana Elias, the director of the Madison Public Library. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with the biggest book nerd or gallery goer in your life? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, long live our libraries and our cultural institutions.